Hey everybody, Nathaniel DeRusha from Morning Calm Studios. Back again. We got another video. This one we're going to be talking about compression. Very light, brief overview here. Part of the 10-minute training series. All of this is going to be a precursor to a much bigger program that's coming out that's going to explain a lot of these concepts. Just want to kind of get it out there for now, get people started because there's a lot of folks that have a lot of questions. So thanks for tuning in. We're going to talk about compression today. All right, everybody, thank you so much for hanging in there with us. So today, we're talking about compression. So there's a lot of mythologies about it, what it's meant to do, and then there's one major cardinal sin that I want to unpack here in the time we've got today. So looking at it, I've already got a file pulled up. I used a fantastic microphone to do this recording a while back. So this is the Neumann U87, kind of one of those quintessential all-in-one microphones, can kind of do just about anything. For this case, using it with voiceover, it sounds big, it sounds exactly like I need it to, but we do have some issues going on with the file that happened in the recording process. So let's go ahead and take just a short listen to this, and we'll start unpacking it from here.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers.
All right, so already we got a little bit of an issue. So you see this peak right here over the top. Got a little bit too close to the mic. Maybe I pushed a little bit too hard on my voice. So this is what we ended up getting, was this little peak right here. So this is a perfect opportunity for compression to help us out. So this file has already been gain normalized. Look where it went. It went to 0 dB. That's exactly where we want it to be. So this actually gives us something to work with. You know, we've got a nice big wave file here. So it's going to be really easy to kind of jump in and start working on it. So let's get a cycle section here. So we can start working on that, and then let's go ahead and open up the plugin. So for right now, I'm just going to use the standard stock plugin. If you go under here in Dynamics, because it is considered a Dynamics effect, bingo, there it is. We pull up the standard file here. So this is a template. I want to make sure that everybody kind of understands templates. If you're looking for some others, let's say we go by voice and we're like, oh, we're doing a narration vocal, bam, there's one right there. Do not want to use that one. A lot of times it comes in with a whole bunch of issues, but until we really understand what we're doing here, let's start off at a 0 point so we can kind of talk down what some of these parameters are actually going to do and how to use them. So we already showed that we've got the ability to access some presets here, but we also have different types that are loaded into this one. So Studio VCA, we've got FET, there's a classic one, vintage, optical, one of my favorites as well. But for today's, we're going to do the classic VCA, because then we don't really need to worry so much about ratio and others. There's an auto function that a lot of times that I will use on there if I'm using a template, but in this case we're just going to focus on the big three. Then we can get to what that cardinal sin is, because it does exist in here. All right, so let's go ahead and listen to it and see how much we're going to be changing our volume right off the bat, because that's the most important part.
Southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
Holy yikes. So look at what we already did. Just by instantiating the plugin, we got a giant boost here. So before we do anything else, let's start to look at why that would have been caused that way. So let's take a look at the metering.
Southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
So we're striking kind of where we need to. I like to stay around the -5 dB, sometimes a little bit more. But in this case, I think we're kind of close to where we need to be. So the first place I want to look is this right here. Anytime it says auto, be wary. So it's adding quite a bit. Let's shut that off and see where we end up now.
Northern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
Perfect. So we didn't peak out anymore, right? So just by turning off that auto gain, we actually saved ourselves quite a bit of work. So now let's start to mess around with that threshold. So what threshold is how much is actually being affected? Where are we opening it up, and at what point are we making that line in there that says, once we cross this line, let's kick in that compression. So right now I've got it set at -20. So let's see if we can dial that in a little bit better.
Northern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
I want it to affect just a little bit more, so I'm going to go ahead and get it up to like 22.
Northern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
So it's pretty harsh, so let me do a little bit more.
Northern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
All right, so really starting to smooth it out, but we still have a gain problem. The other thing too is I think maybe I want to try to experiment a little bit more with the ratio. So what the ratio is once you get to a certain point, you cross that line, the threshold kicks in. Well, how much is it reducing? So you can really get it to where it can become destructive by once you get to that 10-to-1 ratio. Now you're actually hitting the limiter. So we already have one of those built in here as well. But for this purpose, we're not going to mess with limiters. This is just a basic course on how to apply and really quickly get some results from a compressor and not breaking that cardinal sin.
Northern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square in Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square in Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
All right, so it's not unpleasant, but now we got to dial back that ratio. So you change one parameter, you got to change another. It's called, we're really dialing it in.
In Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square in Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
All right, so we're not peaking out, we're not doing anything. It's not so harsh that it's pumping and making like really negative effects, but we do need to start listening to how much we're affecting it.
In Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square in Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
All right, so in this case, we did kind of find a sweet spot in there, but let's say that we've got something going on in the track and we want to start to really tamp down on it, but it starts to really alter the volume. You can just dial this back in.
In Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
So let's say that you like the quality of it. Everything's working good so far. You can actually dial back that overall percentage mix here. So here's a 1-to-1 between the input and the output. So we're going to blend this line with this line together.
In Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square in Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
Now, for a lot of folks, you're not really going to hear much. And in most cases, and when I say most, I mean like 90th percentile, if you're doing it right, you're not really going to hear it. It's being affected on a level that is way deeper for what we're doing when we're trying to mix, because we have all of these signals. If say you got a whole drum set, you got bass guitars, you got all these things, and they're all jumping and peaking at the same time. If you've gone through and smoothed them all, that overall collection of all of them and how they mix together will actually be much more musical and much more pleasant, because we've dialed everything in and we don't have any outliers that are causing these crazy boosts and other things in our mix. So this is super important. Once we actually tamp down those outliers, then we're going to actually take the whole thing and we're going to kind of squish it together like a sandwich. All you want to know is that everything has been smoothed out, and it sounds like we've accomplished that task here. Let's say that you didn't gain normalize, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this Neumann U87, we're going to ungain it. You can see those shrink up quite a bit.
They're in Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
Here's where it can go really bad really fast. Folks that use the gain function to increase the volume to get it back to where it needs to be loud enough in the track.
Northern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square in Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square in Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square in Afghanistan.
You can get a lot of volume out of these things. You're going to hear a lot more of that compression to where we get to that point where it starts to sound like it's pumping. In this case, that's way overdoing it. But more often than not, when I'm going through mixes and I'm trying to fix things, I'm finding where a plugin was applied, it really caused the whole thing to go off the rails and it got left there. So working on a mix and going, oh, well, maybe I need to move this reverb over to a different bus. I need to put it somewhere. I want to take it off the track, or I want to sidechain something, run it through a secondary filter. Folks do that, and then all of a sudden the mix that they were working on that they really liked, out the window. So by getting this right from the get-go, you're going to get way, way, way better results. So compression is one of those concepts that can be hard to, really put a definition on it, because it's meant to be one of those things that's just a tool that's helping us out. It can be done creatively, but 90% of the time, you're really just using it as a tool to keep things where you want them as you're working on that mix and getting those tracks ready to actually be mixed. This is kind of all that pre-production stuff that happens after you've already recorded in. Now, with that being said, I'm using a software compressor. Using a compressor on the front end and committing on the track is a whole different animal. Really just wanted to focus on this one being, here's what plug-in, here's what happens when you add the plug-in, and here's a basic thing that you can do to kind of normalize everything. So really do hope that's helpful. Really do appreciate everybody for hanging in there with us. We've got way more content coming. These concepts in 10 minutes gives a lot of room to really unpack how to dial in your mixes by doing things right from the start. So thanks again, everybody. Make sure that you like, make sure that you subscribe, hit that notification button as well. Got a lot more stuff coming your way. If you have any questions, you can always reach me at 260-217-2692, or you can go visit me at my website at morningcalmstudios.com. Until then, just remember, look, as long as you keep going and you never quit, you will find success in doing this. You will learn it, but you gotta stay the course. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.